Deuteronomy 6:4. Hear, O Israel, Yahweh our God is one Lord. All praises to the Most High, Yahweh only.
Shalom, Barakatah. This is High Priest Kalvon, and we're back with another video lesson, giving all praises to the Most High God, Yahweh alone. And the title of this video lesson is The Bizarreness of King Herod and the Gospel. Now we're here at Wikipedia, and we're seeing the date of birth of JC. And it reads, the date of birth of JC is not stated in the Gospels or in any historical sources, and the evidence is too incomplete to allow for consistent dating. However, most biblical scholars and ancient historians believe that his birth date is around 4 to 6 BC. Two main approaches have been used to estimate the year of the birth of JC, one based on the accounts in the Gospels of his birth with reference to King Herod's reign, and the other by subtracting his stated age of about 30 years when he began preaching. All right, so JC was allegedly born 4 to 6 years before he was born, because BC means before Christ. So JC was born 4 to 6 years before himself. Now, what sense does that make? Now, let's go and see exactly what do BC means. Because if he was born 4 to 6 years before himself, that means they're telling you he never existed. Can you be born 4 to 6 years before yourself? No. Unless it's two of you. He never existed. This is a fairy tale for adults, a religious fairy tale for adults, and you need to let it go because it makes no sense. And there's no evidence for a historical JC. All right, now let's get off into it. Okay, now we're here. And we're going to find out what do BC means. BC stands for before Christ, as in before JC. It indicates the number of years before the birth of JC, although JC himself was born in 4 BC. So it don't give you an explanation for the foolishness of why he was born 4 years before himself. It just lets you know that it's foolishness, although JC himself was born in 4 BC. BC means before Christ, although JC himself was born 4 BC. Oh, man. Now, let's read about King Herod. The Herod in the New Testament in JC's times. Herod Antipas. Herod Antipas was a 1st century ruler of Galilee and Perea. He bore the title of Tetrarch, ruler of a quarter, and is referred to as both Herod the Tetrarch and King Herod in the New Testament. He was the son of Herod the Great and a grandson of Antipater the Idumean. He is widely known today for the accounts in the New Testament of his role in events that led to the execution of John the Baptist and JC of Nazareth. Matthew 14, verse 1 through 12. His father, Herod the Great, was described in the account as ordering the massacre of the innocents, marking the earliest biblical account of the concerns of the government in Jerusalem regarding JC existence. All right, so since they won't give you an explanation for the foolishness, I will give you an explanation for the foolishness. We're here at Wikipedia on the account of Herod the Great, and we see that Herod the Great died 4 BC. He died 4 years before Christ. JC was born 4 BC, 4 years before himself. So if you're a Christian and you don't believe that the Romans backdated history, then you don't believe in JC, because JC's whole birth was backdated 4 years before himself. And the reason why the Romans is backdating their fictional character is so that they can fit him into history and erase the real Maccabees era, because they don't want the Maccabees to be left off as the last known Israelite Messiah, because the Maccabees were militant and rebellious to Rome, and they fought against Rome. They don't want the Maccabees to be the Israelites' role model. They will much rather their fictional character that they made pacifist be the Israelites' role model. They don't want the Maccabees to be your role model, because they don't want you to be influenced by the Maccabees to rebel against them, to revolt, because the Maccabees gave them hell. So, there you have it. JC, his whole birth was backdated. So yes, the Romans backdated history. They did a lot of playing with history. And you got to do your due diligence studies. You got to be zealous. All right, once again, we're giving all our praises, honor, and glory to the Most High God, Yahweh Akkad, Yahweh alone, Yahweh only. And we're here in the New Testament, in the Gospel. And I'm going to be showing y'all the typology between King Herod and King Ahasuerus in the Hebrew Bible. The typology between Herodias and Esther in the Hebrew Bible. And we're here in the book of Mark, chapter 6, verse 14. And I'm going to walk this down for y'all. And King Herod heard of him, for his name was spread abroad. And he said that John the Baptist was risen from the dead, and therefore mighty works do show forth themselves in him. Others said that it is Elijah, and others said that it is a prophet, or as one of the prophets. But when Herod heard thereof, he said, it is John whom I beheaded. He is risen from the dead. For Herod himself has sent forth and laid hold upon John and bound him in prison for Herodias' sake, his brother Philip's wife, for he had married her. For John has said unto Herod, it is not lawful for thee to have thy brother's wife. Therefore Herodias had a quarrel against him and would have killed him, but she could not. For Herod feared John, knowing that he was a just man and an holy, and observed him, and when he heard him, he did many things, and heard him gladly. So they had somewhat of a connection, somewhat of a bond somewhat of a friendship. And when a convenient day was come, that Herod on his birthday made a supper to his lords, high captains, and chief estates of Galilee. And when the daughter of the said Herodias came in and danced and pleased Herod and them that sat with him, the king said unto the damsel, Ask of me whatsoever thou wilt, and I will give it thee. And he sware unto her, Whatsoever thou shalt ask of me, I will give it thee unto the half of my kingdom. Unto the half of my kingdom. And she went forth and said unto her mother, What shall I ask? And she said, The head of John the Baptist. And she came in straightway with haste unto the king, and asked, saying, I will that thou give me by and by in a charger the head of John the Baptist. So she wanted his head on a platter. She wanted his head on a plate. And the king was exceeding sorry, yet for his oath's sake, and for their sakes which sat with him, he would not reject her. And immediately the king sent an executioner and commanded his head to be brought. And he went and beheaded him in prison, and brought his head in a charger, and gave it to the damsel, and the damsel gave it to her mother. And when his disciples heard of it, they came and took up his corpse and laid it in a tomb. So this is revenge literature for what happened to Haman in the Hebrew Bible. Let's go and get it. All right. Let's go to Esther. This is typology on Esther. Esther 7. We're going to start at verse 1. Let's go to Esther 7, verse 1. So the king and Haman came to the banquet with Esther, the queen. And the king said again unto Esther on the second day at the banquet of wine, What is thy petition, Queen Esther? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? And it shall be performed, even to the half of the kingdom. Even to the half of the kingdom. You see the typology right there? So King Herod promised the damsel anything she wanted, up to half his kingdom. And now here, King Ahasuerus in the Hebrew Bible is promising Esther, Queen Esther, anything she wants, up to half his kingdom. See the typology right there? Then Esther, the queen, answered and said, If I have found favor in thy sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to perish. But if we had been sold for bondmen, and bondwomen, I had held my tongue, although the enemy could not countervail the king's damage. Then the king Ahasuerus answered and said unto Esther, the queen, who is he, and where is he that durst presume in his heart to do so? And Esther said, the adversary and enemy is this wicked Haman. Then Haman was afraid before the king and the queen. And the king, arising from the banquet of wine in his wrath, went into the palace garden. And Haman stood up to make request for his life to Esther the queen, for he saw that there was evil determined against him by the king. Then the king returned out of the palace garden into the palace of the banquet of wine, and Haman was fallen upon the bed whereon Esther was. Then said the king, will he force the queen also before me in the house? As the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. And Harbona, one of the chamberlains, said before the king, behold also the gallows 50 cubits high, which Haman had made for Mordecai, who had spoken good for the king, standeth in the house of Haman. Then the king said, hang him thereon. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then was the king's wrath pacified. Okay, you see? So this is typology. If you know the story of Esther, if you read the book, and now since I have pointed it out to you, you can see the typology between King Ahasuerus, the husband of Esther, and King Herod. You can see the typology in the stories. You can see the typology between Esther and Herodias and Esther, right? Both kings promised women up to half their kingdom. Esther requests the death of an Edomite, a famous Edomite. And then Herodias requests the death of a famous Israelite, right? John the Baptist. So Esther requests the death of a famous Edomite, Haman, and Herodias, a Edomite, requests the death of a famous Israelite, John the Baptist. Both kings not wanting to grant the request, right? Because they were somewhat cool with the requested men, but feeling obligated to keep their word, they did it. Now, if you know the story of Esther, you know that King Ahasuerus was really cool with Haman, the Edomite, right? So this is revenge typology, retaliation literature. So we see that, you know, an Israelite woman requested an Edomite man to be killed. here in the Hebrew Bible. And in the Greek Bible, the New Testament, we see an Edomite woman requesting an Israelite man to be killed. Right? So we know that Esther came first. So this Herod story is typology on the Esther story. It's just plagiarism. They're copying it and making the story in the Gospel of Herod and Herodias revenge literature. The New Testament was written by our enemies, the arch enemies of the Israelites and the Most High. And that is the Edomites. As you can tell, it's not hard to see. Right? So let's go over here. Let's go to Matthew 14:1. It says, Matthew 14:1. At that time, Herod, the Tetrarch, heard of the fame of JC and said unto his servants, This is John the Baptist. He is risen from the dead, and therefore mighty works do show forth themselves in him. Okay, so Herod is alive when JC is an adult. All right. He's alive. Now we go right up over here to Acts. Let's go to Acts 12. Acts 12, start at 20. This is Acts 12, verse 20. And Herod was highly displeased with them of Tyre and Zidon, but they came with one accord to him, and having made Blastus the king's chamberlain their friend, desired peace, because their country was nourished by the king's country. And upon a set day, Herod, arrayed in royal apparel, sat upon his throne and made an oration unto them. And the people gave a shout, saying, It is the voice of a God and not of a man. And immediately the angel of the Lord smote him, because he gave not God the glory, and he was eaten of worms and gave up the ghost. But the word of God grew and multiplied. So King Herod died. So we see King Herod dies right there. But look over here. You go to Acts 13:1. Acts 13:1. Now there were in the church that was at Antioch certain prophets and teachers, as Barnabas and Simeon, that was called Niger, and Lucius of Cyrene, and Manaen, which had been brought up with Herod the Tetrarch and Saul. Oh, wow. So Herod just died, and now he's back to life again, congregating with the Christians. That's Herod the Tetrarch. who just died in chapter 12, but now he's back alive again in chapter 13, congregating with the Christians. Wow. Right? So this is reality fiction, man. You know, it's a fictional story. You know, it has some realistic aspects to it. It got fictional characters in real places. It got some historical figures, but they're interacting with fictional characters that never existed and doing things that they never did, right? So we go over here. And let's go to Luke 23, verse 6. Luke 23, verse 6. When Pilate heard of Galilee, he asked whether the man were a Galilean. And as soon as he knew that he belonged unto Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who himself also was at Jerusalem at that time. And when Herod saw JC, he was exceeding glad, for he was desirous to see him of a long season, because he had heard many things of him, and he hoped to have seen some miracle done by him. Then he questioned with him in many words, but he answered him nothing. And the chief priests and scribes stood vehemently accused him. And the chief priests and scribes stood and vehemently accused him. And Herod, with his men of war, set him at naught and mocked him and arrayed him in a gorgeous robe and sent him again to Pilate. In the same day, Pilate and Herod were made friends together, for before they were at enmity between themselves. All right, so this is like a subliminal message. This is like a hidden message, right, of the Romans becoming friends with the Jewish people, because the Herodians were Edomites, right? And if JC says, he makes a prophecy saying that Jerusalem will be trodden down with the Gentiles until the Gentiles' time be fulfilled, right? We know about that, right? And if King Herod and his Herodian dynasty is ruling in Jerusalem, and they are Edomites, Idumeans, then Jerusalem is already trodden down with the Gentiles, dummy. And then you got, on top of that, the Romans in there. It's already trodden down with the Gentiles. But you foolish people out there believe this fictional character JC and his false prophecies. That's another false prophecy, right? Yet another. But, this is subliminally telling you that they came together in making this fictional character, JC. So you see how King Herod put a gorgeous robe on JC and sent him back to Pilate. That's subliminal for the Jewish people, adding something to it, giving them some advice or something, adding something to JC to help the Romans out, because the Herodians are Jewish people today. And Jewish people are a little bit more skilled in the Hebrew customs and traditions and the Hebrew Bible than the Romans are. And now they're friends, and they are in cahoots together, on one accord with one another, in destroying us, the Israelites, with JC. Right? So that's why even here in America, Jewish people, they own everything. Every industry, even the religious industry. Right? So why is it a church on every corner in our neighborhoods? A Christian church. Jewish people run America in every industry. Everyone. The medical field, Hollywood, the Diamond District, the music industry, the school districts, and religious services. Why is not a synagogue? Why is it not a synagogue on every block in our neighborhoods, in the ghettos, teaching our people to observe the Hebrew Bible only, when the people that are in charge, that's their religion? Hebrew Bible only. But why are they feeding you, JC? Christian churches everywhere. Because they are in cahoots, and they've been in cahoots from the very beginning in making this New Testament to keep you in idolatry, to keep you away from the true power, our God, Yahweh. As long as you stay in idolatry, they stay in power. As long as you stay ignorant, they stay in rulership. That's why we're trying to wake our people up. Wake up. Return back to the Most High God, Yahweh alone. And He will fight for us and put us back on top. And our people are starting to do that. Not in great numbers, but a few of us, a remnant, is returning as it is prophesied. And you see all of the damage going on, all of the judgment going on around the world. The world is in complete chaos right now because the Israelites are returning back to the Most High God, Yahweh, our God, returning back to Him alone. The remnant is returning, and we're getting our power back. He's fighting for us. All praises be to the Most High God, Yahweh Akkad. Serve the Most High God, Yahweh only. Keep His law, statutes, and commandments. Yeah, that's right. Stay stumped down for the Most High God, Yahweh alone. Shalom.